Good evening. Seeing as it's 7:30, I'd like to call this September 14th, 2017 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast live by Chelmsford Telemedia and recorded for future viewing. If anyone else is recording tonight, please let us know now. All right, tonight we'll be following the published agenda. And first on our agenda is approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? There were two sets, 316 and 323, I believe.
Yeah, 316 and 323. The one originally that I sent for 316 back in March was the final version. Unfortunately, the reminder one I sent like a couple days ago, it wasn't the final one on 316.
That explains the X's and the red marks and everything in it. Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, I was just looking it up, but the original one I looked up on my phone is the final version. So you have
Okay.
the final version, and I can resend that if you need it.
So should we do that next time we meet?
It depends. If people feel comfortable that they've reviewed it now, we can vote on it now. Otherwise, we can put it off to next week.
I read it and I felt comfortable with it, I just didn't know what the XXX,
You don't
Stood-
have to worry about the XXX.
okay.
I took the sentence out, so.
Okay. Fantastic. All right,
Would
have a
you-
motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 16th and of March 23rd as presented.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, moving right along. Report on and discussion of fiscal year 17 close. We have the town accountant, Darlene Lucier, come up. Thank you so much for coming tonight, especially given the fact that you've already presented Monday night to the selectmen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Okay, so we're happy to report that we successfully closed fiscal 17. I submitted the balance sheet to the Department of Revenue, and they certified our free cash for that $1,076,000 that I think you all got emailed on. No surprises on that number. I think back at the tri-board meeting in January, I kind of reported that the number was going to be around that, about $1 million. That I didn't think we were going to be seeing that, 2.5 million we've been kind of seeing just by watching what the revenues were coming in and the expenditures. I kind of was predicting that was kind of going to be our number. So glad to see that I predicted correctly. You never know when the Department of Revenue gets your balance sheet if they start changing things around. Just to kind of go over the fiscal 17 revenues and how they came in. We did come in about 3% higher than prior year on actuals. On the local receipts, of course, the strong.
I read your documents online, but I didn't print it out. If you have a copy, I'll take it.
I didn't actually bring extra copies.
Okay, that's fine. I read them,
I'm
so that's
sorry,
fine.
yeah.
I just didn't print
I
them.
have it up. Do we have a
Is it up?
cord? I can put it up
No,
there.
it's not that long, it won't make it over there.
No, it's all right. I looked at everything, it's all right.
Yeah, I
obviously-
apologize, I didn't bring, I'm sorry, I didn't bring copies. So motor vehicle excise did exceptionally well again this year. The budget was 4.8 million, but our actual was 5.3. So we did see, that's 12% of our budget. So we're seeing that as a trend, kind of over the last couple of years, that number's been exceeding what we budgeted. So we keep thinking at some point sales were going to flatten out, but we're really not seeing that. So people are still buying cars. We're happy to see that. That helps us in our bottom line. Another line item that we did well on is the permitting. Permits are coming in strong, and these permits revenues aren't part of any of the big projects we have going on. Those permits haven't been pulled yet. So these permitting revenues are basically just a couple new home sales, but a lot of people are just spending the money in their homes, doing some renovations in their homes. So again, that was a $750,000 budget line item, but we actually took in 1.1 million on that. So again, there was almost a 57% increase right there on that line item. So we did well, we're 12% over revenue on local receipts, we did well there. John Souza, our finance director / treasurer, does a great job with tax collection. So we always seem to get almost 100% of our tax collection. He does well there. Our state reimbursement, you'll see there's a little difference between what we actually and what we budgeted for. There was $195,000 that we didn't receive in the veterans and abatement for exemptions for the elderly. We did speak with the state. The money's coming in. They just were sending it in after the June 30th, so I didn't get it in for the June 30th. So it'll hit fiscal 18, but they are sending it to us. It just was coming in late, so that's why that didn't get
Can
in.
I ask you a question about that? So how will that, so will it hit in the 18, so will that mean 18 will look
A
double?
little bit. Well, it's just that, yeah, you'll see the revenue coming in twice for that line item.
If they aren't late again.
If they're not late again, yeah.
Right.
We've seen that sometimes. In that line item, we've actually had that happen before. Sometimes you'll see it's like a $300,000 line item. Last year, they were on time, but the year before.
Is that a quarterly payment you get from them, or is that for the whole year?
It's they're supposed to be sending it quarterly. They weren't even sending it quarterly. So we made a call into them, and they were like, "Oh, we are so sorry. We will get that money to you." So they promised they would get it. Yeah, they just kind of forgot us. It wasn't. It was every week. Every quarter it didn't show up on the cherry sheet, and I was, "What is going on here?" And out of the financing sources, those came right into what they were. Miscellaneous revenues. One of the pieces that we're doing really well on is the SREX receivables. That's from the solar farm, the money we receive from the solar. So we're doing well with that also. It's hard to predict that number, or really budget for that, but we're seeing, I think last year was about that, and this year too. So we're running anywhere between $650,000 and $700,000 on revenues on that. Any questions on revenues? We did.
I did want to ask a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I noticed that from the school, the Medicaid, was
Mhm.
it Medicaid?
Yep, the Medicare.
It was up like $80,000.
Yes.
So that seems to be on a continuous increase, or what's the
Well, last
story
year
on that?
last year was a little less than this year. Last year, like this year, we had $400,000. And if you look at the number from last year, it was 310. So it goes up a little bit. I've seen it's kind of flatten. It really depends on the reimbursements they put in for the Medicare reimbursements. So I mean, this year it did go up.
So the way.
I wouldn't predict on 80,000 every year, but
No, but I mean, it's driven by how much paperwork they file
yes, correct.
and take care of appropriately. So, and that money goes into the general fund,
Yes.
then it's allocated back based on whatever,
We don't
budget?
we don't allocate that money back to the schools.
You do not.
No.
At all, like,
We stopped that process. We used Bernie.
yeah, I know.
Bernie used to do that. After Bernie left, that reimbursement back to the schools actually stopped. We stopped doing that to the schools. So that actually just flows down to the free cash number. It doesn't get allocated. We don't do an entry at town meeting to allocate that money back to the schools. The only one that we allocate back to the schools is E-rate.
Right.
How much do we make on investments?
Yep. So that's where we fell short. Thank you for reminding me, because I want to speak about that a little bit. This year, we were actually in a negative for the interest investments. The town invests we invest in treasury and in the bond market. John is very limited on what he can invest our money in. We were actually, because municipalities can only do that legally, and so the bond market didn't do well this year. So we actually didn't make any money. We budgeted for $275,000 was our budget, but we actually had a negative $24,000, and we actually went in the negative on that. Looking Going forward, the last statement that we got for our investments, we're seeing an upswing, so we're seeing that turn into a positive number. I think that may be due to, when John and I were speaking, it may be due to what's going on over in North Korea. A lot of things have a lot to do with that. People are investing in the treasury market, that helps us with the bond market. This is the first year, I think, that since I've been the town accountant, I've actually seen that number ever go in a negative. We've seen it be low, but never to be negative for the whole year. So that really did hurt, that kind of hurt, and also with our bottom line on receipts. You know, we're really, that $275,000 was kind of lost right there on that line item. So does that answer your question? Didn't do very well there.
Can we talk about the two other ones too? The hotel rooms tax?
Yes.
So is that due to the change in the health code and what they did with?
Yeah, so we have a hotel that was closed.
Yeah.
Basically, both of them were kind of closed, so we've lost on the hotel tax there. And then on the mail tax, it was just a little bit, from what we budgeted, about 6%. But if you look from the prior year, we're down a little bit. That just kind of is just economy, people coming into town. Again, I think the hotel is down, your meals are gonna be down, because you get people coming in, staying at the hotels, and then eating in your town. That kind of goes hand in hand, I think, there. Hopefully, when the hotels finish their renovations and reopen, we should hope. I think the
Yeah, that's my question, yeah.
I think they're almost done. I think the buildings,
Their sign up.
they did, yeah. I think the building inspector just recently told us that they were almost ready to go, so that'll be good.
And then the rental income, there's a small decrease from what was actually budgeted for this year. The rental income's coming from,
The rental income comes from a couple sources. We have a AT&T tower that's on the roof of this building. They pay rent. We also get rental income for the buses that are parked
over at the,
over down at the Forum. We get some small building rental anytime we lease the building here for basketball or any of that type of things. We also get a small rental lease on land over at the farm, Jones's Farm. Jones Farm, they actually lease a piece of the property from us. And I think that's just about it.
so it's just a little less activity than
Yeah,
expected.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then we'll talk about the expenditures. We had about $500,000 worth of turnbacks to the town for salary, basically mostly all salaries. Salaries can only be spent on salaries. So if somebody has a line item that they have money in their salary line item, they always call me and say, geez, can I use that to buy for expenses? And I say, no, it's salaries only, you can't touch it. And library is a prime example of that. They had almost $50,000 and the director called and said, oh, I could buy something with that. I said, no, you can't. So basically, that's really what the turnbacks were. We're mostly we're salary on those. There was a little bit of return on the debt portion. We had about almost $60,000 of debt. That was from a refunding that we did, and that it just changed because it was the interest line, so it just gave us, we didn't have to spend that interest on there. A little bit on the benefits and insurance, and then you can kind of see the rest. We had about $387,000 of encumbered money. The majority of that was the school. They encumbered $312,000 of their 17 money for POs that they had outstanding at June 30th. And then we just had a few small departmental POs that were outstanding, projects that we need to finish. Other than that, again, I always praise the department heads. They do a very good job managing their budgets. Nobody went over, didn't have any issues. So we fared well there. The difference, I think, from the free cash number that we had last year to the free cash number we have this year, we did have almost $800,000 worth of turnbacks last year. With this year, we've only got like the 500,000. So, that, and then between the revenue versus the expenditure, there was a difference between what that was last year versus this year, and just this is what causes the free cash number to come in a little bit less.
Can I just ask you how the process of the end of the year went between the school department and the municipal department?
Yep. This year went really well. This was our first year really being full year being on one system. I was able to print out the year-end reports fully, no problems. Open PO reports spit right out. They were clean. You'll even see, we'll talk a little bit, but I gave you all the fund balances of all the, just running balance sheets and be able to see fund balances, everything together, and not having to go into one system and then going into another system. It just was, it was seamless. It was just much easier
Good.
to close out, yeah. Just a little bit, just to talk about the other free cash balances that were closed out. We have the enterprise fund for the golf course. So they ended up with a 75,417 was their free cash number. And that's their golf course. It's
On the file, what to do?
I just put the free cash, it should be the general fund one is first. It's just kind of says like retained earnings calculation, yeah. Basically how that works is I send them just a balance sheet. It's really just basically expenditures less the revenues, or the revenues less the expenditures. So they actually had 22,966, and that just adds to the number that's already on the book. So what they do is, their balance last year was 52,499. They just add the 22,900 to that to come to the new free cash number of 75,417. We have a new enterprise this year, which is the PEG Access. It's the first year running this under. They fared very well. They have they ended their year with 159,582. I think later in the presentations today, you'll notice that there's a warrant article on there. They're going to be looking to use some of that money for a project. And then the last one, which is our largest, is the sewer. They were certified for $1,474,865. That's an increase of $187,915 from last year. That's what they finished their year in. So that's, any questions on the expenditures or anything? Let's just talk about CPC a little bit, because I know that there's going to be a CPC article. I just want to kind of run through and tell you what CPC looks like. I take CPC into three pieces, and this is why I print them out in three pieces. The first sheet is the current projects that are on the books, and the balances in those projects as of today. Those balances will roll forward, and they can still use that. So those are projects that are ongoing. For instance, I can just, open space, Oak Hill Conservation Land, they still have $7,900. They have some money to use. So it's just ongoing projects. The second page is actually the revenues that gets received through the year. So we have the commitment. So our 17 commitment was $1,038,000, and we had some abatements and adjustments and refunds and such. So the net revenue for fiscal 17 was the $1,017,000. We also get a little bit of revenue from prior year, from people paying their taxes late. We still get a little piece of revenue there. We get some income, interest income, and then our state match, which was $196,000. So the total revenue for CPC this year was $1.2 million. This third page, it's really broken out now into your fund balances. The first three pieces of the fund balance are the ongoing projects. So those are, they're balances that are from the first page, and they're broken out in open space, historic, and affordable housing. So those pieces can't really be touched, they're already set aside, they are actually, those are reserved, so they cannot be touched. The next one I have, the next account I have is, it's a reserve balance, but it's really, it can be reserved for an appropriation. So we appropriated $150,000, and that added to the balance from the prior that there was open, so this $384. But at the Springtown meeting that we just had in April, we used $205,000 of that. So the current reserve for appropriation balance is $179,000. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers around, but I always put that other line out there because as of 7/1, we've kind of already, the town meeting in spring have already appropriated some money, so I like to keep I have a June 30th, but then there's a 7/1 because we have this spring meeting, town meeting. Their undesignated fund balance really is the amount between, is really what the expenditures, revenues less expenditures, is really where that comes into play. They started with $1 million, so we added another $336,000 to that. So they ended their undesignated fund balance, or their free cash balance, the way I look at it, right now is $1.3 million. So any projects that they're gonna be coming forward with, this is really where they would be taking the money from. Whether it's gonna be their debt, from their debt payment or this or that. Right now, the revenues that are coming in, which, like we're talking, that $1 million is coming in, it's really going out to pay debt at this time, at this point. So I've cautioned the group to just if they do a project, make sure they borrow for it, not to use their cash, and just check on the borrowing. And John Souza, the finance director, can always, run reports to show what it's gonna cost for borrowing. So I always caution that. I know it sounds like, well, $1.3 million sounds like a lot, but you spend on one project, or then a land purchase comes up and they wanna do another, it sounds like a lot, but it's nice to keep a little bit, because bond counsel always looks to see what their reserves are when they go to borrow too, to make sure that there's enough money in there to be able to cover everything. And then the third section in there, open space, historic, and community housing, is basically the 10%. So the 10% of the revenue is supposed to go in those buckets. What we've been doing at town meeting, as you're aware, is that the money goes in, $95,000, and then we take it right back out to pay debt. So really, that's what we're seeing. So the reason why you're seeing zeros in there is because I know we did $95,000 this year, but we just took it right back out and we paid debt, along with the $205,000 also was to cover the debt payments. I apologize, I didn't bring a debt schedule with me, but I think they have debt that goes out to 2025 or somewhere in that range.
If you just forward that along, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
I'll send you out their debt payments. And then the last piece is just I gave you the fund balances for all the revolving accounts. I think that's good for everybody to see, because for a long time, it was hard to really get a good handle on all the revolving accounts and all that. So now we're doing well. The first one is Fund 22. What Fund 22 is basically is the, it's like where the circuit breaker money is in childcare, school choice, the dog offer revenue. It's kind of, it's specific fund money that goes in there. At this point, the circuit breaker for the school, the balances, and I'll just kind of run through these, but their circuit breaker at this point has 1.4 million. The childcare account has 1.4 million. School choice is 988,000. These are just some of the Town Manager Cohen's gonna talk a little bit about the forum. We do have a forum account at this point. There's 153,000 in there. You know, these are the accounts that there's very specific to, for spending, sealers, weights and measures, things like that are in this fund. Fund 23 is the reserve for appropriation account. So that's where our sewer betterment money is, the sewer capital improvement, those funds are all in there. Just to give you a little bit of what the balances are in there, like sewer betterment, there's 3.2 million in there. The sewer capital improvement has 8.6. Those are gonna be used for when the sewer needs to be, you know, revamped. That's where this money, the reappropriate for that. Do you have a question, Jim? No. Fund 24 is all the school grants. When I first started, there was, I probably had 2 pages worth of grants. The grants are definitely diminishing, and there's less grants.
How about that?
So, yeah, but they're all in good standing, everything looks good, we're just seeing less and less grants coming through the town. Fund 25 are the town grants, 24 is the school grants, Fund 25 is the town grants. It's nothing, probably the biggest one that's in there that you'll see is the 107,000, which is the library state aid grant that's in there, but the other ones are just kind of smaller grants. And then Fund 26 is really what we call kind of revolving donation accounts or revolving accounts, things that are, but they're still specific, like the bike path or the cruiser sale. When the cruisers get sold, the money goes in there, things like this. They're specific, but they're under a different chapter. They're just kind of donation revolving accounts.
So the bus fees are in here?
The bus fees are in here, yes, 224,000.
So those aren't in the school budget, they're in,
Well,
or these are just all of them?
these are all now, so now,
One chart of accounts.
now everything, yes. Which is nice, that's why I said this,
You know, so things like 3 years ago, 4 years ago don't happen anymore.
yeah, now there's no hiding, everything is all together. So yeah, those are the bus fees. That's why I just thought it was good for everybody to see all of
Now, the
these.
school activity fees, is there a further breakdown for that?
So the student activity fee isn't and I don't want anybody to be confused with the student activity account, that they pay the $150 or whatever it is to be in a student activity. This is kind of something different. It's what they call it, but it's not. The student activity fee actually is under it.
That goes under,
That's under, it's actually under it's an agency account. It's something different, so this isn't,
That's the balance of, like, say, the theater guild plus the band and all those groups.
right, not this one in here, but the one you're talking about in the agency, yes. Those have all the clubs,
Right.
all the clubs. This one isn't just the
This is a standard
clubs.
fee.
what's this
This
one?
is just, it's student activity in the sense it's just kind of, a small donation, a smaller donation account. I'm trying to think what they even use it for. It's, like I said, it's not the $150 payment that the kids pay, doesn't go in here. I think they just have small, I'll look into it, because I don't
Is it
even
like
really
the
know.
principal's account, like the principal?
That's what it's kind of like. It's like that old principals, they used to have an account,
Small amount of money in the budget that principal
like they used to be able to, if someone couldn't afford to go
need.
on a field trip, they would be able to do that. It's what they did
That's
used to
where it's
call
going
that,
from.
exactly, thank you, the old principal's account. And we pulled that, it was kind of included, and the principals could kind of write out a check out of the checkbook, and then we said, no more of that. So the money that was in that checkbook account, when we closed those checkbooks out and cleaned up, we put a little bit of money in there
Okay.
that was in that account, when we balanced out the accounts. So that's really, like I said, there's a large group of them you can go through, and if you have any questions on any individual one, you can let me know. The next thing I do was all the trust funds. Fund 81 is all of our trust funds. Basically, the ones that everyone's always, is our general stabilization, which is 9.2 million. We'll be adding a little of that with the free cash that we received. The sewer stabilization, we do have a sewer construction stabilization account that has the 1.7. And then the rest are just all, we have cemetery, library is the majority of trust funds. And those are that whole list.
How much is in the cemetery?
So the cemetery, their largest one is the perpetual care, their perpetual care account. And that has $2.3 million at this point in that account. And that's just, to
maintain all the cemeteries in town.
to maintain all cemeteries, and that's paid by the people who,
Mhm.
when you pay a perpetual care.
Yep, they came before the Board of Selectmen, and they briefly talked to us last year. And there was some discussion about whether or not they'd be folded into the
DPW?
DPW, yeah. So that one of their main concerns was the perpetual care account.
And the last fund that I gave you is Fund 84, which is just our OPEB trust account. And the current balance in there is 6.7, almost $6.8 million. That kind of just rolls into the next subject is, we just had our OPEB actuarial study done. We will be having them come out and do a presentation to the boards. But one of the good things that came out of it, that we were happy to see, is that our unfunded actuarial accrued liability went from 92, almost 93 million down to 70.
That's great.
So was nice. And then to stay on schedule to be fully funded, I think the last time we had the actuarial study done, we were looking that we would need to put like $3.2 million away of some sort. They're talking now that we need to do 1.9 million. So it's a little bit attainable if we had that money to be there.
It's not as unreachable as the other one was,
unreachable
yes.
as the $3.2 million, yeah. So if you haven't gotten the study, I can forward the study to everyone.
I think you emailed that.
Did
yeah.
we,
Paul sent it to us.
Yes.
yeah, Paul, I was gonna say, I'm sure he did. But like I said, we are gonna be having them, come out and do a full audit, presentation of the audit to everyone. So, the auditors are here. I have Prowse and Sullivan in-house this week
Okay.
and next week, to actually do a final on all of these numbers. I haven't heard that they've made me change anything, so I think that
Okay.
my balance sheet will be the way that it will stay the same, so.
While it says unaudited, it's pretty much,
Yeah, I
Looking
just
like-
say, I always put unaudited on there just until
well, of course.
their blessing to it and then
Yep.
it becomes so. But if anybody has any other questions, I will send you, I'll send you the debt schedule for
Thank you.
CPC.
Thank you, that was
But
very
anything
thorough.
else, let me know.
That was great. Thank you,
Okay,
Darlene.
you're welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Up next on our agenda is review and discussion of warrant for 2017 Fall Annual Town Meeting. And Town Manager Paul Cohen and Finance Director John Souza, if you come to the front, we can start our review.
Seems like just yesterday we were at Springtown meeting.
Because it lasted long, yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Great to see you, but that means summer's over.
You know,
We're talking fall town meeting, so glad to see you, but I kind of wish I weren't here.
be like
yet.
another month or so, yeah.
Exactly. What we have, John and I have this evening, and we have some guests who will be joining us for a couple of the articles, is the fall annual town meeting warrant.
Thank you.
We've Monday evening, the Board of Selectmen signed the warrant, and it's been posted, and and we're on our way. And I recognize your time frame for getting the book
Thank
to publication, because October 16th will be here real soon.
Yep, that's up on our agenda next.
Exactly, so what we'll do is we'll walk through it. I mean, the good thing about this town meeting, just in summary, is it's really not a financially driven town meeting. There's 31 articles, but very few of them are financial, and of the financial ones, they're all understandable, so it's not a complicated story. But what I will like to do, and is in courtesy to our guests here, who we can free them up, is I'll probably start with we'll do it out of order, just like
That's fine,
sometimes
yeah.
town meeting does. If we could go towards the end of the warrant to Article 23, which has to do with the solid waste collection. So I'm gonna ask, 22.
22, yeah.
22, so I'm gonna ask Nick Parley to come up and join us. And we'll just get to that real quick. And what I'll do is I'll lay you out the rationale as to why this article is on the warrant. And, okay. And then Nick can answer into detail. But the motion under the article, 22, is to amend the town bylaws regarding solid waste by adding the following sentence to the end of subparagraph I. Basically, it says, "The town shall not provide solid waste collection services to non-governmental multifamily complexes with 4 or more rental units." And you say, well, Paul, why are you doing this, and why are you doing this now? Well, we're having an unprecedented or
Yeah.
a change in the town's housing stock.
I don't think any of us are asking why you're doing it now.
No, but it's important for people watching,
Yeah.
at home. Chelmsford obviously grew, exploded in its population from a farm community in the 50s into the introduction of the Interstate 495 and Route 3 to basically a suburban bedroom community in the 60s and 70s. And then sort of your next wave was sort of the condo development. And so basically you have homeowners primarily. And yes, in more recent times, you had some apartments such as Kensington and so forth. But what you're seeing now in this housing stock, and it's not just in Chelmsford, but it's, you see it in Boston, so clearly it's most identified there, but you're seeing it in Littleton at the Point and in Westford and so forth, is this large demand, and hopefully it's not a bubble, but it's a demand for multifamily rental units by millennials who perhaps can't afford to get into the housing market, and perhaps by elders who basically are looking to downsize. So on the town's proposals, and right now, is something that has never occurred before. And these are projects that aren't, oh yeah, somebody's talking about it. These are projects that have submitted applications to Mass Housing for the affordable housing eligibility, and/or are already before the Housing Board or the Planning Board, the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board under the town's bylaws. So you can see the most notable one, last evening in the room next door, 104 Turnpike Road had its first hearing, 168 units, rental units, right on Turnpike Road across from Warren Avenue. So, that's real. 93 Brick Hill Road has submitted an application to Mass Housing. This is right next to UPS Drive. Literally, you go down the driveway to UPS, and it's the land to the left. It's wooded, and it's interesting topography. 124 units. So we anticipate that they'll receive their response back from Mass Housing within several weeks, and an application will be filed. 11 Cushing Place, that's been permitted. Hasn't been constructed, but it's been permitted. That's the one in the center behind Brick House Pizza, 124 units. 276 Mill Road, that's under construction right now. That's 108 units. That's the Mill Road 40B. Right now, they've got 4 foundations in the ground, and they're actually are framing the clubhouse building, 108 units. 50 Hunt Road was approved 3 weeks ago by the Board of Appeals, a 40B of 84 rental units at Hunt and Littleton Road. As you go past Enterprise Bank to the traffic signal, the big piles of dirt there, that's permitted. 7 Gorham Street hearing, I believe, is within the next couple of weeks. That's already been advertised. 56 units. That's on, and I know there's a member particularly following this one closely, but that's on the other side of 495 in East Chelmsford, as you in that little stretch before it hits the Lowell line, and that's 56 units, literally on the town of Lowell line. And again, the next one is 241 Littleton Road. That's been approved for 20 units. So if you add all those up, and I didn't do the smaller ones, the 5s and the 6s, that's 684 units and so obviously, Nick being responsible, because he's our go-to person for solid waste recycling collection, amongst other things, he said, hey, Paul, you're seeing what's happening here, and he says, the concern is we're going to have add another vehicle to the fleet for solid waste collection as disposal. And so basically I had Nick do the research, and the first thing he did is he worked with Frank Green, the assessor's office, saying, well, can you tell us how many existing multifamily units, with four or more that we have in the community? And as you can see, it's 636. I'm sorry, I changed the slide. 600, oops, whoop, that wasn't a good one. There it is, 600.
Much change.
Whoop, too fast for change. There it is, 636 units, of which the largest ones are at 82 Brick Hill Road, 180, 62 to 70 Boston Road, 149, 225 Littleton Road, which is Kensington, 42 units, 42 to 44 Boston Road, Worthen Street, Technology Drive, and Tingsboro Road are the ones that are over 20 or more units. So you can see, we're basically be doubling, or more than doubling, our existing amount of rental housing stock in the community. That's significant. So I then said, Nick, well, can you work with the haulers to get an idea, well, what are the numbers? What would this mean? And he came back with the annual savings for the existing units. Now, again, this is not adding trucks or anything else, but he's saying for the existing units, if we were to eliminate this, you would save, you can see the numbers, 24,500 in trash collection, 40,000 in trash disposal or tipping fees, and 10,500 from our recycling contractor, easily $75,000 for the existing. And I'm gonna ask Nick to describe what will happen if we have these new units. But I think the key is, and well, why would you consider this, is I'm not aware of any other community in Massachusetts that provides solid waste and recycling collection to multifamily units with 4 or more. And the reason for that, I believe, is because those are considered commercial properties. Condos and we know where they are, whether it's Williamsburg or what have you, those are homeowners. Those are taxpayers, people who pay, and not to say that the multifamily commercial don't pay taxes, but generally, the tax payment is for somebody who owns a home, has made the investment. A commercial property, it's part of their operating expense. And basically what I'm postulating is, I don't believe that if the fact that we provide that service results in a lower rent for the residents, what I think it does, it results in a lower cost for the commercial entity or trust that owns the property, and therefore more profit for them. So I think there is a distinction here, and I think other communities clearly have made this distinction. And I think in Chelmsford, it really wasn't a concern because it wasn't a big component of our housing stock. But as you look ahead, and now I'm gonna transition to Nick, if you could explain to them what the impact will be with these units that are on the way.
So, right now, we're looking at about doubling the apartments. So, just to give you a quick overview of what we have, is we have 3 contracted trucks for dedicated routes 5 days a week. With these routes, Monday through Friday, they take approximately 9 to 11 hours to complete. So you're looking at, anywhere between 45 hours to, you're not allowed to go over 53 per DOT rules, without so many hours of rest. So at this point, we're flirting with our maximum DOT hours that we are allowed for the trucks. With any significant increase, we're gonna have to add a 4th truck. The equipment cost is immense there for a brand-new Packer truck. But there are a couple things that affect the price. Prevailing wage, fuel. So, if we don't get these hours down, I think it's a conservative $280,000 per year expenditure that we're gonna be looking at. And I think that's assuming fuel and prevailing wage kind of stay in the same. And I've done some research. City of Boston is the only other community in Massachusetts that offers collection for apartments. They offer something a little different where it's, they're offered a baseline service and they have to pay additional for additional pickups and additional.
That's not insignificant, that's for sure.
And I'm not gonna sit here and say we won't get tax revenue from the new units that come on, but I think, again, we're here looking carefully at our budget. We know we've got constraints, whether it's schools, public safety, what have you. I just think it's responsible for me to bring this issue to the community and to you and the selectmen and town meeting, because I just think it's an atypical service. And if we're looking at, how are we mining our expenditures and how are we choosing what we spend money on, I'd rather put $280,000 in the classroom or on the street, in police or fire, than which I don't think, again, provides any material relief for the people doing it, you know, because, you know, if the market rent is X dollars per month, I don't think that because we're collecting the trash, that they're taking it down a notch a little bit and giving the homeowner a break. They're gonna charge what the market's going to charge. So again, I just provide this for your consideration,
No.
and if there's any questions that Nick and I can answer.
Actually, yeah, Nick.
Let us know.
So the 280 per year increase is for an additional truck,
Truck driver.
or truck driver.
Truck and driver.
Truck and driver, yeah. Would, I mean, would that even take care of the incoming crop of houses? I mean, we're flirting with the numbers now.
Yeah, well, a lot of those will be containerized dumpsters.
Okay, so it'll be a pickup.
So it's more efficient than curbside.
Okay,
But I think that those numbers would definitely push the 3 trucks over.
would have to get to the,
and
go
y-
to
and
4,
you'd-
yeah.
You'd have almost a 40-hour-a-week
Yeah.
truck driver.
Okay.
So Nick, if this is implemented, this new sentence, and the existing $75,000 potential savings happens, how much away from that magic number are we of the 53 hours? How far does that take us down? Are we not flirting with that anymore?
You're gaining yourself some more breathing room.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's
How
gonna,
much more, do we know, a ballpark?
I don't know how quickly
Okay.
houses are coming online, you know, that's the other thing. And we've got some projects that, you know, the housing authority, that is building another large unit.
Yeah, 56 units on Littleton Road, that you- the
Mm.
foundations
And-
are in by the gas station.
Because of parking lot constraints, we have 2 dumpsters that we're planning on servicing twice a week instead of going there. So that again eats into the hours, instead of
Mhm.
going there once a week and servicing 2 dumpsters. Couldn't fit it with the parking lot constraints, so there's a lot of variables here.
Mhm.
But I'd say you're buying yourself another couple years of breathing room, depending on how quickly you're adding housing, condos, and curbside collection.
Okay, another couple of years where we're saving 75,
Yeah.
the give or take, yeah.
Yep.
Can I ask about how the notification, so say I own one of these, say I was lucky enough to own something at 110, whatever. I own a
You're-
50-unit apartment complex. How am I gonna be notified that I'm now responsible, and what's the legalities of me notifying these owners?
Well, the first thing it has to do, it has to need the town meeting vote.
Right.
And then what we would do is if the town meeting were to vote this, as you know, it's a bylaw change, it has to go to the Attorney General. That can take up to 3 months.
Yeah.
So what I would propose we would do is if it's voted by town meeting, we would immediately notify the property owners that the town has voted this change in the bylaw, and then upon ratification by the Attorney General, which we anticipate to be within 3 months, you know, that this service would no longer be provided. So realistically, town meeting is over by the end of October. So basically, we'd probably tell them, look, if this were to take place, we would probably do it at the beginning of a month. We'd say, all right, February 1st,
Right.
you know, that this service will, therefore, you've got some time to, you know, basically just call a private hauler like, you know, others, well, what your commercial properties do in town.
Yeah.
And get that service provided. I mean, they already have the space and everything else on their property. It's just basically they're gonna be responsible for maintaining it. And you know what? They might then be a little more responsible in terms of what's going into the solid waste recycling, because as Nick can attest, right now, those are probably the lowest recycling rates in the community because there's, you know, no skin in the game.
We also see a lot of turnover of bulky waste, couches, tables,
Ah.
chairs, mattresses.
Yes.
We had one property
Yeah.
that nearly had the number of mattresses per month being collected as the number of units.
Yeah, you know how it works.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
And they said, oh, well, we're allowed 1 bulky item per week, and that's conforming to the rules, but not the spirit of the rules.
That's good, I like that. That's good.
grade.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
All right, so,
So, Paul,
ahead,
there's
please.
gonna be a lot of, units coming in. What other ways can we change to, you know,
Making
mean,
their cost?
well, yeah, because this is a huge infrastructure
Yeah.
cost. I mean, it's not just the, you know, the
it's
waste,
not just that, I
it's
mean, we're gonna have
additional
school,
police,
it's
a different.
additional school kids.
Well, yeah, I wasn't even going down
Well,
there
yeah.
because I already
Well,
kind of
because
went
the
down
new
there.
standards on the units now, 10% under the new state standards have to be 3-bedroom units.
Mhm.
Whereas before it was always, oh, okay, well, they're just 1 and 2 bedrooms and no kids. Now, because the state recognized
They
that there's
require.
a need, then now, so when they come in, for example, the one on Brick Hill Road, if that comes in, they have to provide 10% of those units have to be 3-bedroom units. So you are gonna get school children. But again, it's the police, it's the fire, it's,
In
it
general
would impact.
infrastructure, yeah,
Infrastructure,
everything.
exactly. It's water, sewer,
Paving.
paving. Yeah, I mean.
Is there
it's
anything,
significant.
instead of being the last town to implement stuff like
Yeah.
this, is there anything that we can kind of proactively, other ways? I mean, again, these are commercial properties, and that we can maybe kind of be a leader or
So, operationally, we're looking to get a little leaner and meaner in recycle collection. Right now, we have a lot of condos that have recycling totes, 96-gallon barrels where they put their recycling. Operationally, much cheaper to put them in a recycling dumpster. If you think about the time it takes to empty one trash barrel. Off the top of my head, 360 Littleton Road, Courtyard Condominiums, it has close to 100 of those trash barrels. If we can get them down to 2 single-stream recycling dumpsters, these are condos that we're still offering the service to. Operationally, I think there's some savings there to be gained, just in hours of the truck.
what else, I mean, now, is
But-
that, what do you need with that, like a
But,
town meeting
so
vote,
what,
or what is that?
No.
No, it's a policy of the.
Policy.
yeah, it's just, the totes are often liked more by the condos because they're flexible. Oh, I can put these on the grass behind the dumpster, I can put them a little bit here, a little bit there. Where with a recycling dumpster, you're likely going to lose 2 parking spots.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're offering a service, 2 parking spots seems reasonable. And then there's what we could do for reduction in volume. We've got an upcoming solid waste contract. Every year we bid it. I don't know if you wanna,
Yeah, we're up for renewal. We've just extended our, as Matt knows, we've just extended our solid waste disposal contract. The problem in Massachusetts is costs aren't going down because there's more waste because of a healthy economy. So you've got your private haulers and your construction and such. But also, you have fewer landfills because they're not permitting any new landfills, nor does the market support the construction of any new trash to energy plants so you've got right now, you've got a seller's market.
growing trash market,
Growing trash
decreasing
market.
disposal market.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing we're looking at is we sort of, again, we went with the 8-town consortium to bid that. The increase actually was pretty good. We got a 1% increase for the next fiscal year, which is pretty good. But you're still paying, $72,
Plus CPI.
plus
Boston
CPI,
index.
for the final 2 years. And then the other part is the collection, recycling and solid waste. So we're looking at everything. We're looking at single day. We're looking at, keeping the practice we have now, perhaps though with 1 hauler instead of 2, separate haulers. We're looking at whether we should get automated containers, like the other towns have. But basically, we're looking at what is the most cost-effective is what we're driving at. And this is the practice that we've done. So we'll hopefully have some news for you in a few months.
Okay.
Now, what about like permits and stuff for the new units?
Oh, yeah. No,
Do we come, I mean, is there a differential between a house permit versus them, and
Oh,
how
yeah,
much
it's-
can we push it, and
Yeah.
can we?
Well, you have a permit, it's based on the value of the property. So, yeah, there will be permit revenues coming, and unfortunately, we really are gonna be in this 2 to 3 year lull till we hit the new growth, because
Yeah.
these things will get built, but for example, we're sitting here today, even the ones that are under construction up at 276 Mill Road, those will not be
Be up and running for a while.
up and running and operational. We won't be able to assess them on the new growth next June, but in the meantime, we will get building permit fees, but no, we don't have an
We
accelerated.
don't have like a differential, right? This
Well,
is,
there's a commercial rate and there's a residential rate.
But there's
yeah.
nothing else that we can charge for, again, because it's an incremental tax to the infrastructure that,
Right, no, we
We're
don't have,
kinda
we don't have an
already-
impact, we don't have impact fees
No.
to that. Massachusetts is very conservative in terms of what you're allowed to assess, whereas, as opposed to some other states.
So these are things we can start thinking about as we go into the next budget year and stuff like that, and the next town meeting.
Yes,
I think, not that this is totally related, but we're talking about these properties.
Mhm.
And I've been following closely this summer.
yeah,
And I think one of the things the town might get to start doing, is to see the relevance of these and the impact that this will have on the schools. There are a lot of, not just 3 bedroom apartments, but also 2-bedroom apartments. That's a majority of the apartments in most of these units. And for example, Byam will already be
Oh, yeah.
overcrowded.
Yes.
So these units are going to have a very bad impact to that
Right.
school.
We notify the school committee, 'cause if Kathy knows the thing, whenever one of these things comes up, to know that that impact is going to come. The other thing is difference is that there's a difference in the community, and, you know, there's 2 things. The good news is, we will reach our 10% affordable housing goal. For the Commonwealth. We're blowing right through there. We're gonna blow right past 10%, which is good. Because for years, we thought that was like the whole.
We thought that was an impossibility.
Unattainable.
Unattainable was the word, you know, so the change in housing stock. I think the downside is, though, is that you'll have a more transient population. I mean, you know, this is not judgmental, but the fact is that obviously if they haven't purchased a mortgage and, you know, that commitment that sort of holds someone to a community, you know, people will be following their jobs and, or other aspects of their life, and so, you know, it's a different mix. I mean, we've always lamented the fact that, gee, we can't get enough town meeting reps or participation up at, you know, precinct 2. Now, you know, you may have that concern, but, you know, you've got, I mean, if you're talking 600+ units, you know, you're talking 1,000+ people. You know, the concern is, you know, you lose the you may lose the connectedness to the community. And so, and I think that's, you know, and I think that's one thing that has benefited Chelmsford, is where your housing stock has been so predominantly home ownership that, you know, you have those ties and connections, but when it's rental, it's just like we see the commercial brokers down there. Oh, my lease is up, gee, it looks good.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, or, you know, change, so it's, so that, you know, so those are the things that we've got to consider, because, you know, it also just reflects, you know, the change, and again, coming in.
Makes planning more
Well,
difficult.
planning more difficult, particularly
Yeah.
in schools. You know, you may have, you know, when the superintendent talks to you, gee, we didn't see these kids coming in the 5th grade. Well, if you've got some turnover in rental stock, it may even have
Yeah.
wider variances.
There'll be more surprises.
Exactly. Okay.
So,
All right, thank you, Nick.
Nick, thank you very much.
Next, why don't we bring Pete Padula up, because Pete's waiting patiently. And Pete's got 2 articles.
Ah,
2.
2 for the price of 1.
He's got Articles 13 and 14. John, can you make sure I start with that? Hit something that's one thing. Pete, as you know, is the executive director of the Chelmsford Telemedia. And as Darlene reported earlier, this was their first year operating under the enterprise fund, and Pete, you know, he made it in budget and generated free cash, so great, Pete. But
Off
Pete's
to a good
had-
start.
Pete's had 2 requests, and I'll just turn it over to Pete in terms of what's on their agenda right now.
Sure. You know, it's new for us to be operating this way financially. We are fortunate in that, you know, the cable revenues are still fairly healthy. We're not seeing a decline, so, but we're building up our undesignated fund balance, and I don't really want to do that too much. I still anticipate that we'll be able to do that in each of the next few years. It's hard to predict much further in the media landscape what's going to happen to cable revenue. So just these 2 articles, they're fairly straightforward. The first one, Article 13, we want to provide lighting for the bottom floor space at the CCA, and that is, they call it the cabaret room, and we get a lot of programming. Well, we get some programming from there, and we've been sort of charged with trying to get more programming. It's a nice venue. They have music. They have poetry slam. We have one volunteer producer who does an art exhibition every week, Helen Moriarty. She makes a show, and she's got to set up lights down there so that she can get, you know, good enough looking video. So we're going to put in a state-of-the-art kind of lighting system that they can use even if there isn't TV, but it'll be ready for TV. It's got a controller, and it's got nice soft lighting so people look good. And we may do a little bit of audio reinforcement as well.
Which reminds you should tell them they're being broadcast in high def.
That's right, everything's in high def, right.
As if we didn't notice the cameras, yeah.
What do I have to say to that?
We need to install softer lighting.
Right.
Yes.
Infrared too, they can see right through that. You forgot to say, if the funding's so good, how come the cable is so short over there? Right, we are gonna fix that.
Is that the hissing sound, or?
Yeah, right. So, and this has already been bid out. I do have a quote from Barbizon Lighting's on the state bid list. That's a $28,000 quote, so I put in 30 for that, just in case there's a little overage.
Bump, yeah, okay.
Okay. The second article is, I'm sure you've seen the CTM monster truck that's been driving around town.
Yeah,
That is how we get broadcasts from remote sites such as the town meeting, football games, et cetera, et cetera. It is bigger than any garage, than our garage that we had. So through working with Gary at the DPW, he was able to give us the one bay at the Richardson Road site, but it needed a lot of work. We've already started spending money on that project, and we don't have a full estimate of what it will cost, but it'll probably cost more than this 40 grand. I just wanted to max the ask out because I want to leave at least 10% of our budget in the undesignated fund balance, and just take some out for those ongoing renovations. We have a long list, including asbestos remediation, so it's probably going to add up. So, and that'll be it's actually a much better place. It's kind of close to the high school because the high school kids use that truck a lot. It's part of their learning in the TV club. And so we're excited about it, but it does need a lot of work, so.
and that's been considered the best location to put it?
There weren't a lot of options, but
That's another question, yeah.
it is, now that the dust has settled, well, not on the construction, but yeah, it's really, we were looking at maybe building a whole building behind the central office of the school. Jay Lang had said okay, and we were like, we really don't want to do this. Yeah, it's big enough, it's tailor-made, it just needs to be, it doesn't have upgraded electrical.
Shored up, yeah.
It was used as a welding shop, so it was a mess. Yeah, it's a great location, because, our main studio is at Parker as well,
Yeah.
so we're all right.
So it's right there in the,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
All right, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Pete.
you. All right.
And then our last guest in the room this evening is Donald Van Dyne, who's sitting in the back left there. I'll invite Donald to come up, and we're going to continue our journey backward into the warrant, to Article 6.
Well, this is a surprise.
This is a surprise. I thought we were at 21st.
We were texting this morning.
Yeah, and just to give you, because we haven't had a reserve, but I just want Donald to give you a discussion, because we're still moving on it, but I just want Donald to explain where we are today, but Donald will be back next week.
We'll back next week. Oh, so it's twofer.
But I just
Yeah.
want you to know, what's going on, because, the warrant's out there now, and I think people, so just go ahead, Donald, just quickly just explain where you and the committee's at.
Yeah, so where we are is the EDC met with the Board of Selectmen
Mhm.
and at that work session. And at that work session, it was determined that to move this forward, we need to create a job description. The EDC's put together some job responsibilities, and then the Board of Selectmen has drafted an overview. So what we're going to do next is, it was a suggestion from the Board of Selectmen, that we break out in 2 members from Board of Selectmen and the EDC. They get together, they discuss it, so they can advance the documents forward to Paul for approval of the position.
Mhm. And you guys televise that,
What they
yeah,
want to do is to back into a title, look at a salary range, and the job responsibilities.
I think if anybody has a question about it, there's a recorded broadcast of the August 29th meeting in which you guys had that work session.
Correct.
And they go into depth about where they were headed.
2.5 hours.
Yep.
And that is on, that can be viewed now on?
That can be viewed on YouTube through Chelmsford Telemedia.
Right.
Yeah.
August 29th.
August 29th, yes.
This is 40,000.
Yeah, that's
Is
what
that the cost?
if you ask me what I'm doing here, basically, if town meeting acts favorably on the article and a position is created, we're only going to have that person for half of the fiscal year. Because by the time we get the person hired on board, you're probably talking January 1. So when you look straight at what number 40,000, that would be half the annual salary for a position. And then I think the expenses are probably about half as well. So at the end of the day, you're probably looking at an $80,000 employee. I think the range offered was between 80 and 100 when, in the discussion at the meeting in August, as well as roughly $20,000 in expenditures. That's not counting the indirect costs, such as if this person were to take benefits, which could add another $20,000+ to the position. So I think as we left Springtown meeting, none of us at that time anticipated that we'd be here at Fall Town meeting, but again, the, you know, discussions and analysis, this, you know, it certainly continued. It started, I think, realistically, it started with the selectmen's goals for the new fiscal year. You know, they've clearly established a goal that they want to see such a position created. I'm responsible for the administration of the town, and obviously I'm respecting the selectmen's goals and trying to find an effective way to integrate a position into our, you know, management team of the community. There's no doubt that additional resource would be helpful. The question is, as Donald describes, we're trying to nail down, well, what should that person's responsibilities be, and how does it fit into the team that we have right now? And that's been, as you can see, a matter of considerable debate.
Considerable.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So, again, I think just stopping in here tonight is to let you know where we are, and, because obviously, it's gonna come back to you and town meeting will look for your recommendation as well as that of the selectmen. And obviously, they'll hear from the Economic Development Commission at town meeting as well.
And we thought about, like, instead of a permanent position, a temporary position, a contractor for what we need to supplement, so then it can be more flexible and dynamic, meaning you're not set to, this is the job description for, you know, this is what we're hiring, but rather as the needs of the town change, because, you know, you may not need someone full-time in 18 months. Or I hope not, because I hope they do such a great job that it's all filled and it's going and blah, 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 right?
That's a good point. I think earlier comments Jim and I were making, it may be premature to have this type of discussion tonight because the Board of Selectmen and EDC are meeting next week, and they will formalize their recommendation to Mr. Cohen. So at that point, when we come back to you next Thursday, we'll have a much better sense to where we're gonna move forward, how we're gonna move forward with this.
Is that meeting gonna be televised?
No.
Is that open to comments, public comments?
Sorry?
Is that open to public comments?
Okay, yeah, it's Economic Development Committee meeting next week, the 19th.
But it's not gonna be televised, but it's an open meeting.
Economic Development's not televised.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it starts at 7, and we certainly have public input at the beginning of each meeting.
What day is it next?
The 19th,
19th
so it's
is,
next Tuesday at 7 PM.
if I'm not there, feel
Have
free
you
to,
thought about, as Anita said, a temporary position or maybe even a consultant for a certain amount of time?
I think,
I think there's been significant discussion about how this is stylized, and I think
right.
that's been part of the debate between the BOS, the town, and the EDC. I'm telling you, take a look at the August 29th recording, and you'll see where we are with things.
so it's curriculum night for me at McCarthy, so but feel free that Anita asked, feel free to,
When
any
is
one of you who can make it, feel free to say that at the meeting.
the 19th.
This is interesting. I do want to commend the town on DCU coming in. That is fantastic. I'm elated to hear that that's happening. So between the efforts of everyone involved, that's phenomenal.
The comment I would have is, the article should have 40,000 personal costs for 6 months. I think you
Yeah.
have to define
6 months.
for the,
For fiscal year.
what that $40,000 is for. Because, even if you go to 80,000, I'm not sure you're gonna get the best qualified person. I think you're gonna have to pay a lot of money to get a qualified individual, in my opinion. at least.
But again, that depends on what they come with to us next
Yeah.
week.
Is this worded vague enough, or would you just change it if it was gonna be possibly a consultant at the end of the day? Or it just says personnel, would that be?
That's why I use the word position. I try to make it as vague and flexible as possible, because it is evolving. Other towns have this. I mean, there is such an economic development director in Billerica, and Bedford has one as well. Some communities don't. Burlington doesn't. Probably don't need one, because we're in the mall and all the development down there. So it's, like I said, we're wrestling over title, we're wrestling over responsibilities, and so I'm trying to.
Just flat out wrestling.
Wrestling,
Yeah.
all right, so I'm trying to, listen to the input from the different committees, because it's a big, it's a big deal for the community, and there's a lot of interest and a lot at stake, and so that's why, like I said, but,
I certainly don't doubt that we need to make the investment, I just wonder whether or not we may need to make the investment forever. Like, I'd rather make sure we're spending it a little bit more, like, I'd rather spend even more money.
No
but do
job's
it-
permanent.
Well, true, but I'd rather spend
Right.
a little bit more money and get bigger bang for my buck than necessarily hiring a person.
Well,
There might
let's,
be a way to-
let's debate that next week when they come before
Alright.
us with all the new information.
And I know I will listen to that meeting, I promise, but, once this person is hired, would they be, eligible for all of the, the things that the town offers?
Yes, they'd be fully benefited person, yeah.
Which might be, to your point, is whether or not it's a contract.
Like, I'd rather take that benefit money
Right.
and spend it more today and get a better return for it,
Exactly.
than, pay that 20% in benefits, even for a year. Like, it's like, what's your ROI on this money?
You've also got the IRS concerned about is the person qualify as a consultant or as an employee.
All right, yeah, but don't
Right,
go
no,
down that
that's
road,
a
right? Like,
concern,
cause
but-
No, that's a concern.
It's a concern, it's a legitimate concern.
But you can do, they can have certain projects, right? They can be managed and do projects, and then you can spend it on advertising, right? Like, this is, we're talking about, granted, this year it's only 50,000, but it's $50,000 in an annualized basis, right? When you add in benefits and what have you, and, is that money, are you getting the best ROI for it?
But to
For what
play
we're trying
devil's
to do.
advocate, on the other side, you're saying, are we gonna attract the best candidate possible if we're going on a contract versus an employee position? Because you're gonna pay more for a contractor for the same quality as you're gonna pay for someone
But
who's
what
gonna
is
be.
the
a-
expertise that
but-
you're getting?
I'm saying that
And what
for an
do you-
expertise level, you may have someone that's willing to take a little less if they're taking the benefits from a full-time position, rather than a contractor saying, hey, I'll come in on a contract, but I want a larger contract because I want to be able to cover all those expenses I'm not being paid.
But I'm not-
That's
but
why
I
there's a
think-
discussion. We don't have something in front of us right now that they're
Let
gonna
me
talk
add a new
about.
shade to this, so
Yeah.
just to leave you with this idea. Keep in mind, we have an economic development team that's already in place, which is made up of the 7 members of the EDC, the Community Development Office, and the Town Manager's Office, okay? We have 2 tools that we can use to facilitate our EDC needs. That's financing and that's zoning. Zoning we've accomplished. Financing would be through TIFs, so that's something that would be discussed at a later point. So this position may not be as grand as we're visualizing. It could be a support position to support the efforts that are already in place. Keep in mind, we have DCU that's coming forward. We have other announcements that possibly will be made at a later date. So we may not need, as other communities may or may not have, this director position. So we could actually scale it back and look at a support position. And this is something that they'll discuss next week. So keep that in mind. It may not be something as grandiose as $150,000 position.
Donald, do you anticipate there being a consensus coming in next week?
I think so.
You
Yeah.
think so?
I think so.
Is that a cautiously optimistic
No, I'm
statement? or-
actually
Okay,
optimistic.
so we won't have to have the BOS come in too, just you'll come in and present then?
Well, actually, if it's coming through the committee
Remember,
and
it's a,
going
su-
to.
it's a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Not all the selectmen will be at the subcommittee
That's true,
table.
that's true.
I believe it's Selectmen, Pat Wojcik and Ken LaFave are
Okay.
the selectmen, and then Donald and, I don't know
We
who's
haven't- we haven't
Given said, yeah.
I don't want to indicate that the fact, and we've seen this at town meeting and other venues, the fact that the majority agrees doesn't mean you have unanimity in agreement on a
Really?
position. Yeah. And that's been part of the discussion, so, so I don't want to sit here and say, oh, yes, everybody will be on board and with one vision, because
But I'm talking about the group of 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have one more question, where this is mid-year, is this just gonna be funded out of our general expected revenues now?
it'll be a tax levy. I mean, this will come out of the tax levy.
Yeah.
That would be how it would come, because I see it as a recurring expense. But I'll tell you, I mean, it's, yeah.
I will tell you, leave you this idea, that EDC has proposed a support position
Mhm.
that could evolve into something greater at another point, but today, we're looking at a support position.
Okay.
And that's the consensus of the EDC.
So would this person answer directly to the EDC or to Evan or to Paul?
I think
Well,
that's
no,
why
it'd
we
be,
have
it'd
to
be under the
watch the
town.
August
Actually, I guess it depends, but I think it'd be under you.
Yeah, that's been part of the discussion.
Yeah.
And right now, as you said, as Donald described, the EDC is looking for a support position, the Board of Selectmen are looking for an economic development director.
Well, can we clarify on that? Because the Board of Selectmen really have not taken a
Well,
position on
in their
that.
goals, they identified it as a director, and And so, but I think at the end of the
It
day.
depends on which one you're asking.
Right, I think the end of the day it would report to me,
Right.
the town manager.
I may be totally ignorant.
No,
of
that's
what I'm
okay.
bi-
That's okay.
So what is, how does Evan fit into this picture?
Paul, can we adjust your mic, just so make sure
Oh.
people can hear? Thank you.
You're getting text?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My husband can't hear you,
Oh,
so
I'm
he
sorry.
wants you to.
Evan is the Community Development Director, and he is a critical part of our economic development team, and I foresee that he will remain a critical part of our economic development team. That's a politically correct way of answering your question. So the way I do it is I bring everybody to the table. So if we have something that's of significance in 129, if we're going to meet with a broker, a property owner, or company, I'm having with me in such a meeting my assistant, Mike McCall. I'm having the community development director. I'm having, if this new position, Donald has been at some of these meetings this summer. We've even had members of the Board of Selectmen in at some meetings. So we're presenting it as a team approach. And, so no matter what this position evolves, that will be the status. It will be it will be part of a team. That's how I envision it. And again, the way, as we've had discussion at these meetings, that, I'm responsible for the administration of the management of the town. And so, I will, make the final determination and proposal to you and ultimately town meeting. And hopefully, like you said, it's, we're all on the same page when we're all done. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Thank you for all your
Thanks.
work.
Thank you.
All right, so we can go back to the beginning, so to make things a little easier, since there's no one else in the queue this
Well-
evening.
I was wondering how long that water break was, you were on Article 20.
No, right.
Yeah, I know, huh?
Right.
Sam, do you want to speak at all about any of the charter? No, I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Nope, I probably not, but I want to make sure, because you're here.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, so this next should go much quicker, and you'll see where he's saying about why wasn't it
Yeah.
financially driven. First one is reports of town offices and committees. At this point, and again, I'll open this up if you have any suggestions, but I think we will be hearing from the UMass Lowell West Planning Committee. I think Jay Lang will be giving a report on school facilities in terms of their whole drive there, and then John, by our bylaw, will be giving the 5-year financial forecast.
And Jay's going to be in front of us next week, too.
Yeah, okay, so again, if there's anything you need, the other thing I have on the next slide, just to give you a sense of where we are, here's our financial information. Darlene touched upon this, but I think it's helpful as you go into a town meeting for people to have a bearings of where we're at. Darlene mentioned the $1,076,417 in free cash. Sewer Enterprise Fund free cash is $1.5 million. PEG access, you heard from Pete earlier, is $160,000. Golf course enterprise is $75,000. General stabilization fund balance is $9.2 million. Available property tax capacity, you can see that's blank because we still don't know that number, and working yet with the assessors. And then the foreign maintenance account fund is $153,000.
Paul, should that say PEG and not PEC?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll correct that. Yeah, that's my initials. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so that will be there. The next slide is a carryover from the spring, so I'll delete that. But, and then when you're looking at what the articles are financial based and the recommendations, you can see some are blank, but E-rate would be $35,000. At this point, in collective bargaining, we still do not have agreements with our public safety unions. We have a arbitration hearing with the firefighters the second week of October, so I don't see that decision coming down either before or in a timely manner for town meeting. And the police ones have not been, the two police unions have not been scheduled yet for arbitration. The remainder of the town is done, including the schools. As you probably read over the end of the summer, they've settled the teacher's contract, the paraprofessionals are settled. The only thing that's a loose string at the school side is their custodians. The custodians are new because of the new program. They have created a union, and now they're negotiating their first contract. And my latest discussions with Dr. Lang is they're optimistic it will get resolved. I mean, everything else is resolved. It's just getting down to the wording of a new contract, which takes some time and effort. So there'll be no action under 3. Stormwater Enterprise Fund, we're going to eliminate that appropriation. I'll talk to that a little bit. Article 5, and actually I'm going to have John to speak to that. Article 5 is to amend the fiscal year operating budget. At this point, we have no proposed changes. And that's not unlike last fall. Last fall, I even pulled the whole warrant, article from the warrant. So, but this one, I left it there, but there's no action. Article 6, the economic development position, we just spent time on that. That's my current ballpark. Again, that would come from the levy. Purchasing the Chelmsford Forum is 1.2 million. We'll talk about that as a borrowing, and I'll have John explain, what we're doing there. It's related to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund from the spring, in terms of the borrowing amounts. Roberts Field Playground, that's a CPC article, and that's going before CPC next Wednesday, so we'll be here next Thursday, probably Bill Askenberg and myself. The number for the proposed plan and their master plan is roughly $450,000. General Stabilization Fund, again, that's unknown because of these unknowns, but obviously that will be the balance in free cash. And then you've got a couple community preservation articles, replenishing their recreational and open space funds at $50,000 each, coming from the funding sources Darlene described. Wayfinding signage is $15,000. Cemetery Improvement Fund from the sale of lots and graves fund, he's looking for $25,000 to continue his work at the cemetery in the center. Telecommunications equipment and media garage, you've just heard from Pete. So those are the financial articles. In terms of the recommended allocation of free cash, that will just, again, depend upon, finally what's happening to the Roberts Field Playground. The E-rate to the school department, and Darlene's here, but I asked Darlene for a minute to bring her back up here to explain, this is different. Not that E-rate's different, but the funding is different, because she handles the accounting of the towns. I'm gonna ask Darlene to explain, why are we taking this from free cash?
When I was having free cash certified this year, I had the balance of $35,000 just sitting there. And the DOR called me and said, you need to close that now to your general fund. You need to close it out and make that part of your free cash. And I said, no, we're gonna allocate that at our fall town meeting. We always take the money from the prior year at fall town meeting and allocate it back to the school department. He said, there's a change in that. We no longer can do that. They require me to close it to the undesignated fund balance in the general fund. And then if you want to allocate it to the schools, you can do that through the free cash process. So that's why we have to do this. So that $35,000 did actually close so was part of the free cash number of the 1076. So like I said to Paul, we just really need to, if we're going to give the school back the E-rate number, it does have to, the articles has to read that it comes from the free cash number, because that's really where it's sitting. So it's just the way the DOR, every year they do little changes to my balance sheets and how we handle some of the appropriations, and that's one of the changes that they are having me do this year.
So in past years, that would have closed differently.
It was a special revenue.
Yeah,
It was actually in a special revenue fund, and now they're going to start handling it in the general fund. So it's going to be different.
So our free cash number included that 35,000?
Correct.
So we're actually under $1 million if you really look at it.
Right. We're about 900,
Okay.
99 something.
And the issue is I've given you the history since 2010.
Yeah.
So the question is, well, why not just include it in the regular appropriation in the spring? But it's all over the place. You can see it was almost, $79,000 2 years ago. So if you can say, oh, Paul, it's always $30,000 a year, just roll it in and just, do it in the spring.
Yeah.
But I think, kind of your point on the Medicare, part of this is by their efforts for reimbursement and what they're doing.
And this year, fiscal 18, the technology director at the high school, or the school department, they've broadened what qualifies under E-rate. So the school department's actually telling me that they're looking, probably in fiscal 18, they're looking at probably $100,000 worth of E-rate reimbursement, because they're able to use more of the technology. It's not just the computers, it's other pieces of it that fall under our reimbursement qualification for E-rate. So they're talking a bigger number. I haven't seen any money yet come in as 18. I know we just started the year, but they're saying that they're going to have a larger E-rate reimbursement this year for 18, almost maybe $100,000. So we'll see.
Okay. So That's E-rate, always an interesting chapter. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
The next article, and I'm going to turn it to John in a moment, but the next article is collective bargaining. Again, there'll be no action under Article 3. And the reason I left that one on is I want people to keep reminding folks that we have this liability out there, because when those contracts settle, we're going to have to fund the retroactive, and we're also going to have to fund within the levy going forward. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to happen this year before the tax rate is set, which means we're going to have to draw from the stabilization fund, which goes to another article. So that's 3. On 4, the stormwater management fund, as you know, there was considerable debate and discussion at town meeting regarding the enterprise fund. We left with $1 million authorization to borrow, we were ramping up and so forth. And I'll go to the next slide. On June 29th, in a very timely decision
Wasn't that done?
by the Environmental Protection Agency, they postponed the effective date of the stormwater permitting program, they called the MS4 revised permits, by 1 year, from July 1, 2017 to July 1, 2018. So that means we get to do it all over again next spring, assuming it gets resolved. What happened here was there was extensive litigation going on about these new regulations. Did it exceed their authority and so forth? You also had a change in the EPA administrator who didn't particularly care for this direction, to put it mildly, and that's on record as well, so that's not speculative. So again, they pushed it off by a year, and then the state had to decide, well, what are they going to do? Because you remember, there's a state and a federal, and then after a few weeks' discussion, the administration said, no, we're just going to follow the Fed's lead, because the state could have said, well, that's fine, the Feds are waiting, we're going to roll with it anyway, because we're progressive environmentally, but they chose not to do that. So that left us in a situation of alarm, because, again, we were on the doorstep of moving forward. We had borrowed the money, and this is where I'll transition to John. We had, we had trucks on order. We were ready to roll. We had interviews with people to put into positions, and then it came to a screeching halt. And so now I'll turn it over to John, because the challenge that now goes to John, I'll give this to John. The challenge that now goes to John is, in Darlene's, well, they got to submit the balance sheet, and we have this appropriation and borrowing on our books.
So, good evening. So as the town manager described, and I know you were all there at town meeting last spring, there were really 2 pieces to the stormwater article. So the first was, we had one article where town meeting appropriated an operating budget for stormwater of personnel, services, and expenses of $1 million as amended. So what we've done since then is, and the town manager just laid out the reasons why we're not proceeding forward with the stormwater fund. As you know, the town accountant will be required to submit the tax rate recap this November. So we consulted with the Mass Department of Revenue, our field representative, and the cleanest way for us to handle this is, since we're not going to expend anything, we're not going to be receiving any revenue, is for it to go back to town meeting and just ask to amend the stormwater operating budget vote for the enterprise fund to 0. So there's no cloudiness. So that way the town accountant can show the original vote from the spring town meeting of $1 million for the operating budget. Now we're amending it to 0, so it'll be totally clean. And that will clean that up.
So it keeps that fund open for the future use, however, it's going to be that valued at 0.
Right, the enterprise fund town meeting voted to create it, but there will not be any revenue source, and there will not be any expenditures out of it. And then, as Paul described, the second piece was, as you recall, town meeting approved a $1 million borrowing for the trucks, and the renovations at the DPW facility at Alpha Road. And since we're not moving forward on that, when the Forum project came along, one of the things we explored with bond counsel is, could we ask town meeting to reappropriate the $1 million that we've already, because as treasurer, we had already had it in effect to, I had already been working to borrow this money, and it literally happened right around the time that these regulations were changed. So we borrowed the money in together with, it was a very small piece, but if you recall, we borrowed just under $7 million for the modular classrooms, $3 million for the capital plan, and then $1 million for stormwater. So it wasn't easy, and it couldn't really, because of the timing, we couldn't just take that stormwater piece, because it had already been released and everything with the bond market. So what we explored with bond counsel, and they've reviewed the wording of this, is we're going to be seeking town meeting approval to take the $1 million that was in borrowing proceeds that would have been used for stormwater projects and reappropriate it to the purchase of the Chelmsford Forum. And that will eliminate having to go and borrow more money to fund the purchase of the Forum when we already have this $1 million sitting in this fund not being expended. And if you look, the purchase price is a 1.2 million. So the difference, that's why you see the two pieces of this article. It authorizes me to borrow up to 200,000 for the difference between the 1 million and the 1.2.
So what happens if Article 7 fails?
If it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
the money's still there,
Yep.
and it would be, be issued but unexpended, so we probably come back.
Come back in the spring, yeah. Okay.
yeah. So we would seek to then
I'm not
use
saying it will, I'm just
Right.
saying, yeah.
That's what would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have authorized but unissued debt, and in this, in this case, you have authorized and issued debt, but it'd be like having a capital item that you didn't fully expend the money on, so
So you'd be paying interest on it and no
Yeah,
having no
and
economic
actually-
value. So it's just sitting there.
Right, the
and
benefit
just-
that actually may work out is that if this does get approved, we probably got we know we do, we got a better interest rate back in June than we
That's
would
true.
from going out,
Yep.
So, so we kind of, maybe hit the market right
Yeah.
in that respect. So, okay, so that's what happened with the stormwater fund, and then this way, there's no ability, because you can imagine in the early days of July, there were concerns saying, well, are you gonna put the surcharge on? Well, what if you spend money out of the account? We said, it's any, now we're eliminating the appropriations, there's needn't be.
I just
All right.
asked a quick question about the stormwater thing, so they put it on hold
For a year.
for a year.
Yep.
And is there any discussion about changing,
Yeah.
the requirements and
Yeah,
all
what-
the
what- what-
specifics?
What is being proposed, because there's been litigation, is they've sent them to basically arbitration, to dispute resolution, to see if they can come to an agreement on what these regulations could be. So the hope is, and the other thing with the year is the year also made it in sync with New Hampshire's regulations.
Okay.
And so now the hope is that hopefully they can reach an accord, and then everybody can, in a timely manner, that people can go forward with a plan, because you do need to ramp up and have advance notice. So if they reach an agreement next May 23rd, it's not gonna help us. I think the hope and goal is maybe they reach an agreement by the first of the year, so that people can then move forward with their planning. But I think this one is just an unknown where this is going at this point.
I just perceive that as being a real problematic, getting town meeting approval.
Oh, yeah, no, there will not be a request brought before town meeting until the matter's resolved.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I guarantee you that.
You don't want to spend every Springtown meeting one night talking about this and rescinding it? You don't?
Yeah, no, yeah, all right, yeah.
Well, I mean, no,
Right.
not really.
Right, okay. All right, so that's the Article 4. Article 5, again, the operating budget, no action. Article 6, the Economic Development Division, we talked about. Article 7 is for the request regarding the purchase of the Forum, and is, again, it's a long motion as drafted by and approved by bond counsel. The key here is, again, in 1998, when the town had the special legislation enacted for the 20-year lease of the Forum, it authorized the Massachusetts Department of Capital Planning and Operations to enter into this lease with the town. But the key part of the legislation is that the town of Chelmsford had the option, by the end of the 20-year lease period, to purchase the property for the appraised value less the cost of improvements, alterations, and renovations made by the town to the property. We had an appraisal performed, $2.7 million. The Inspector General's Office of Massachusetts accepted that appraisal. We then went and calculated our capital improvements, and as you can see on the spreadsheet, the capital improvements totaled over $1.5 million, which means we can purchase the Forum for less than $1.2 million. So I'm asking for 200,000, round the number, because there'll be some incidental costs. But the bottom line is the town has a choice to acquire permanently entitled to a $2.7 million asset for 1.2. And the other thing is, well, what kind of condition it is. The beauty is, by making those capital improvements, we're also getting a building that's in good shape. And so I've detailed what were the $1.5 million improvements over time. And as you can see, we pretty much have done everything we could to the building. And as we were nearing the end, we were looking at places that we could do, from the ice slab to the roof to the dashers to the scoreboard to the exterior doors to the LED lighting, and we did the structural repairs and so forth. So,
Because, X braces were missing.
right, because the building is over 50 years old. I believe it was built in '64. But, so this is the proposal that's being brought for the town meeting for consideration.
So
Who
Paul,
owns this now?
Right now, the state owns it.
State.
The state owns it, and if we don't exercise the option as of June 30th, then the state ownership will remain with the state.
so the land that this is built on is in Billerica.
Portion is in Chelmsford, a portion is Billerica.
The
We will-
form itself is in
The building
Billerica.
itself is in Billerica. We will pay real estate tax to Billerica.
Do we know what that's gonna be?
Now, it would be on the assessed value of the building. It won't be based on 2.7 million, but my guess is they would assess it at more than 1.2 million. I'm not gonna sit here and, because we'd have the right to file an abatement if they overassess us.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
But, but yes, we will pay property tax on that building. So it'd be like owning a $2 million home. So, if you want to get an idea of, what that
So
would be.
is there any obligation that we have to hold this? Like, if we, so it's appraised at 2.7 million, we
Yeah.
have the option to buy it for 1.2.
Yep.
Can we turn around the next day and sell it? If we so deemed it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But, and the town does have the only thing, we've seen the draft deed. What runs with the deed is the University of Mass Lowell, and this carries from the original legislation. University of Mass Lowell has the right to do 5 practices per month, and the youth organizations have the right to ice times. But yes, there is no restriction on the property if we acquire it. However, we'd have to do something for an ice rink if we did sell it, because if we know that if we had to build an ice rink over by the high school, it would be in the millions of dollars, not to mention the real estate that you'd use over there. But the answer to your question is yes, it's not a restricted deed. But yes, it is a very valuable piece of property located right next to an off-ramp to Route 3.
So you could,
Yeah.
so you could sell it to a developer, and they can build the amenity, they could do whatever they wanted, they wanted to.
But
we
it'd be
kind
in
of-
Billerica.
But wait a minute, but let's.
No, I see where he is going with this one, yeah.
Enhance the corridor,
No.
yeah.
Right, I mean, like, I'm a Realtor, and this is right off of Route 3.
Yes.
And all they have to do is build a little, they have to incorporate,
So what you're saying is the town purchases it, we turn around, we flip it, we sell it. We
Yeah.
sell the land for more than we're purchasing it for. Then we use a portion of the funds we sell it for to build a new rink that's on our property that we aren't paying taxes for.
yeah.
And the rest of the funds go toward the town.
Yes, I mean, we might not want to do that coming out of the box, but I
Yeah.
think that
But, I mean,
going
like-
forward, you have an asset, yes.
Yeah.
You have
Very
a
clear. Very valuable asset.
very valuable asset.
Exactly.
That's not in our town.
That's not in our town, that we could actually make some money off of.
Which is why, again, I think the town would be wise to take the investment of 1.2 million and move forward with it,
And we
yes.
wait 5-10 years, we let 129 build up, and then we sell it for a pretty penny.
Yeah,
We wait till the school project goes through, and then we have, okay.
yeah. You're gonna go up in front of town meeting and explain all that?
You can too. You're there.
I'm just gonna sit and watch.
Yes, we think that it's a sound investment for the
Yes.
community.
Yes.
Right.
A few years ago, we were talking about a couple million possibly. So.
Mhm, yeah. Okay, so that's,
We know how we're gonna word that in the finance book, right? Like strongly,
You send me the language, I'll
extremely
include it.
strongly.
Yeah.
all right, so then, Article 8 is Roberts Field Playground, again, that's before CPC. Again, they have an expanded playground. We'll have a presentation with Bill Askenberg next meeting, so I won't take your time this evening. Again, Article 9 will be the General Stabilization Fund. One thing I want to point out is, again, we know there's 9.2 in the fund, and that obviously has been produced by the good investment market. Didn't help the bond market, but it helped in the investment market. But what I want to remind folks is, everybody's excited, we got $1 million, but remember, when we were at Springtown meeting, and I want people to remember this, we withdrew $730,000 from that fund to meet the snow and ice deficit, and the facilities improvements we put into the building, the new HVAC work. You can see it's all spelled out there. So you can see, because that was the question at the Springtown meeting, are you sure we can withdraw this money? And Darlene made put her neck out in the line, and the rest of us said, yes, we believe we'll have $1 million in free cash, and sure enough, we did. But you can see our net return to the stabilization fund is roughly about $300,000. So that's not, and also, if you look at that free cash, I mean, it's $1 million out of a $123 million
Not good.
budget is less than 1%, folks. I mean, so I know sometimes you get caught with the number as opposed to what the number means. And so, $1 million of free cash for Chelmsford is different than $1 million
That's a
from the
scary
Neshoba
number,
Tech.
is what it is.
Yeah, or the water district, so, all right, so that's the story with stabilization fund. Article 10, again, as I said, that's CPC, and that's just replenishing their funds, that's non-controversial from them. They will make that vote next Wednesday, and we'll come in with that. Article 11 is the village wayfinding signage, again, they're looking for $15,000, we'll hear that next week. Again, it's not very complicated article, it's, remember, town meeting saw the money before for the planning work and design work and that. Again, 12, I touched on earlier, $25,000 for the sale of graves and lots to the cemetery work, so that moves really quickly. That will be part of the consent agenda. 12, and a couple of the ones up front, like E-rate and so forth, with the moderator, we'll be proposing a consent agenda.
Oh, good.
Again, we just did the telemedia ones, 13 and 14. 15, now you get into recreational marijuana. Mike McCall has been handling that as an expert for, be careful how I phrase this.
He's an expert, huh?
Mike's an expert.
Talk to Mike.
Mike has been assigned this because of his tremendous legal background. There is a financial consideration of this, and Mike could come here next week and explain that. And why I say that is, under the revised state law that becomes effective next July 1st, the towns can assess a 3%, excise or sales tax, or actually it's excise tax on marijuana sales. Plus, also you can have up to a 5-year, impact fund on that as well. So Mike has been researching in terms of what might that be for the town of Chelmsford and so forth. In Chelmsford's case, and this will help explain it, under the new state law, because Chelmsford slightly voted in the negative to oppose the law, we're able to prohibit recreational marijuana in all of its components in the community by way of a town meeting vote. In communities such as Lowell that favored it, not a town meeting town, such as Drake that favored it, you'd actually need a not only a town meeting vote, but you also need a ballot vote. So so we don't have the ballot threshold in Chelmsford because under the law. So what's being proposed here is a series of 3 articles. The first one would be that majority vote to amend our general bylaws to provide for a prohibition of non-medical marijuana establishments. 16, the following article, is the zoning bylaw, which is sort of belt and suspenders. So not only it's in our general bylaws prohibited, but now we're amending our zoning bylaws by restricting, marijuana establishments for non-medical in our community as well. And then 17 would be if you want to go the other direction and say, we really want to study this because this may be something we don't want to close the door on. So let's put a moratorium in effect and through October of 2018.
What about Tingsboro? Does Tingsboro have a law on marijuana?
If you have to ask the Tingsboro guy,
Me?
Yeah, you.
It's funny you ask. Actually, on Monday, the selectmen signed their first letter of support for medical marijuana dispensary. We did a 1-year moratorium on recreational, but after that, it will be allowed in Tingsboro as well, probably in the same locations as medical.
But an establishment can't do medical and recreational. Just so you understand that, So, but it looks like Tingsboro's going for the money. And they're also a border town to New Hampshire where it's not legal right now in New Hampshire, so.
It has interesting ramifications.
Did you, and also, did you do an assessment or an estimate of what you may get in revenue from that? Did that come up?
Yes, you're looking in the 6-figure range.
Yeah.
Potentially for recreational. Like, could be high 6-figure range, maybe even in the couple $100,000 range.
Yeah.
Basically, this state has almost the same amount of medical and recreational users as Colorado, but they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dispensaries, and Massachusetts only permitted some number of dozens of them. So the amount of sales that these facilities are going to have is extensive.
The other thing to consider is you're allowed to deliver across town line. So, for example, if there was an establishment in Tingsboro and Lowell, let's say you're up in Drum Hill at Parkhurst Road. If there was an establishment in Lowell, you could order,
Takeout?
delivery, delivery.
Not just takeout.
Not just takeout, delivery.
Delivery marijuana.
Delivery.
That's
Of
ridiculous.
marijuana and marijuana products, because it's not just the thing, it's also the foods and the edibles and so forth.
And the candy,
And so,
which is-
why I mention that is that then means you could have the impacts of the law, even if the town,
So you might as well get the money from it.
well, I'm not,
No, no,
I don't set policy in
Devil's
this.
advocate here.
I don't set
Yeah.
policy in this town, but I think to inform the community, because people are confused about the new law, it does allow, so for example, just like you can have a pizza delivered to your home, you could have, and so, as Matt said, they'll be in Tingsboro. Lowell already has medical marijuana. We expect they'll use recreational as well. Again, if you're Lowell, you're probably gonna put them by your town, permit them by your town borders, because significant revenue. So, you will hear from Chief Spinney, you'll hear from the Board of Health. I mean, obviously, there's health and considerations and
Like both of
impacts,
next week.
community impacts, but the bottom line is, it's a sticky one, like you said, because you may have the impacts even if you don't permit them. It's just like you can transport alcohol across this town or state line.
We can thank our neighbors to the north, you know?
Right, you can't get you're funny, you can't get alcohol delivered.
You can't get alcohol.
Can't get alcohol
delivered.
delivered, but although I guess you can order by mail order now, right, but not
We're
quick
gonna
delivery.
test the delivery guys, or what are we gonna do here?
All right, so anyway, I just wanted you to be aware of that, that you have these articles and.
Not
you
delivery, it's
can-
Tapato?
Could be $100,000
Oh,
a year.
we're thinking double that at least for
Yeah.
Chelmsford. We would think, Mike can speak
What
to
do you
it
think of the
further, but-
vote? About 50% of us voted for or against, you know?
Right,
If you take that amount of people in Chelmsford versus the amount of people in Tingsboro, you add that up, it's gonna be at least triple.
Now, Paul, you said that by town meeting vote, since we were not a majority voting for it in the
Right.
town, you mean that by
Town
town
meet-
meeting vote, we can say that we don't want any retail recreation?
Correct.
Not
Right.
that we are going to disallow any of the state laws on the, meaning.
Right,
so
right,
we're not gonna
right.
criminalize it in
Right, no,
town.
I'm talking
Okay.
about the
We're just not
establishments.
gonna have any retail.
Because,
Okay.
yeah, and the retail is, the edibles, the sale and so forth, and you gotta understand that because it's not allowed federally, this is a cash business, so
Yeah.
those places are like fortresses because of the inventory and because of the cash that they're holding.
A lot of banks won't touch it.
A lot of banks want to, so they're very secure, and I'm sure Matt experienced it when he's looked at in Tingsboro. I mean, these are very, just because we saw that with the medical as well. I mean, they're very secure facilities. But the other part of the facility is those where you consume on premises, and I don't think anybody wants that. Basically, a place where it's consumed, much like you can consume alcohol on premises. So that's, I don't think anybody wants to have that, but really, it's the sale of the
The
products.
reason they tied it to the vote is so that people aren't doing the not in my backyard deal, right?
Right, yeah, and the other part is there's some question of whether that's constitutionally valid.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why if the town were to want to prohibit it, we would not only do the general bylaw, but we'd also do the zoning, so that way if the constitutionality got wiped out, we'd have the zoning to stand on. The difference is one's a majority vote and the other's a 2/3 vote, the zoning bylaw and then the moratorium, so.
So the first two passed, the moratorium we don't have to deal with.
Well, if the first two, exactly. And then if you don't want, now, I'm told the planning board last night had a public hearing because of the zoning bylaw. They split 3-3 with one member absent on the zoning article. So, as you can see, this is probably gonna take considerable time at town meeting.
We're talking multiple nights here.
Yeah, we're talking. But again, just give you that as introduction so that, for your further discussions
Better than
next
speed
week.
Is it?
Yeah, right. So that's and now Article 18 is a lot easier to understand. 18 is brought forth by the Historical Commission. They want to add 2 additional scenic roads to our scenic road inventory, one being Main Street from Lovett Lane to the Westford Town Line, and the other being School Street from Graniteville Road to Main Street. And then you reference the map. Basically, what scenic roads are is it provides a requirement of a public hearing before the removal or trees and the alteration of stone walls. So that's the idea of scenic roads, you want to preserve it, so,
Yep.
Article 19 is a citizen petition to rezone a portion of the Russell Mills Swim and Tennis Club on Mill Road. And basically what's going on there, to my understanding, and again, I don't know if you've reached out to the petitioners to come.
Not yet, but
But they were at the planning board last evening as well. what's going on there is that they have to make an investment of, I guess, $1 million into the pool facility at the Russell Mills Swim and Tennis Club. And so what they're proposing to do is take a portion of their excess land, rezone it as residential, and then sell it for residential development. I understand this has happened once in the past, and so that's what's being proposed there. Article,
So there's a different tax classification for open space and general residence?
oh, yeah,
Yeah, so we would
Yeah.
actually see an increase in tax revenue?
yes, and it's also RC as opposed to RA and so forth, so it could be
That's
multi-family.
general residence.
Yeah, yeah. So
Sounds good to me, okay.
Article 20 is another citizen petition, this another zoning article by citizen petition, and this pertains to accessory animals, or herd animals. And basically what this is proposing is to take the current standard of acreage requirements of the 40,000 square feet that's permitted now if you had a horse or a goat or cattle or so forth. And then you would change that to make that the standard for 2. So the idea, these are herd animals, and then you go, once you've made that initial change, everything else remains in effect. The additional 15,000 square feet per large animal, which is defined as 25 pounds or more or heavier, or if you have the smaller animals such as goats and so forth, it's the 10, anyways, the bottom line is it's allowing for companion animals. I understand the planning board held the hearing on this one last evening and unanimously supported this change. So again, I don't know that really it's financial, but it's just, it's a question regarding zoning,
Twice the animal, same amount of space?
for the companion animal, and then it
Well,
moves.
usually if you have a horse, you have 2.
Right, exactly.
You have a pony and a horse or
Right,
whatever.
a companion, right, or,
How many people with one goat?
right.
There might be.
Yeah, usually it's 10 or smaller so now, All right, Article 21 is a follow-up. You remember at the town meeting authorized, after considerable discussion, the sale of the 101 Mill Road property. Now we're proposing to take the back land and transfer it to Conservation Commission. So there's the big parcel, if you kind of draw a line, making a trapezoid in the middle there from the parking lot, that back land would then go back to the Conservation Commission. So we do have an A&R plan that has been recorded, but I wasn't able to get it on the slide for this evening because it's trying to graphics.
So transfer happens.
Yep.
We sell the front portion?
Right, the front portion, the selectmen have authorized it, an RFP has been drafted, we had meetings over the summer, if you caught any of our
Couple.
meetings, with Linda Prescott over the
Oh, but over language on the
restriction.
preservation, yeah.
That's now been wrapped up, so we're proceeding with sale. Article
Once or- what, 3
23,
years?
yeah.
Are there any actual bidders, or you just?
Oh, yeah, it'll go out to bid, yeah, there'll be
Fantastic.
sale bids,
People
yeah.
are interested?
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yeah, Article 22, we already talked about, that was the multifamily. Article 23 is basically the provision in state law that provides for electric power companies to execute a payment in lieu of taxes payment in lieu of taxes to comply with their property tax liability obligation. And the law provides that any such agreement shall be the equivalent of the property tax obligation based upon full and fair cash value. What does all this mean? Basically, it means it's trying to address the utility problem that assessors have with utilities in terms of assessing. And basically, what you do is you accept the statute provision and allows the assessors in the town to enter into an agreement with the utility company, because this has been subject to extensive litigation over the years in terms of what are the values of the poles and the wires. And these are now another utility in terms of generation equipment on the site. So, again, in fact, we were in this room this morning with a preliminary pre-permitting meeting with the company that's doing the solar farm at the Swain Road landfill. The next remaining 8 articles all have to do with the charter revision. I don't think there are any financial implications to that. I'll walk them real quickly just for the benefit of those watching and you here this evening. One has to do with amending the language regarding candidates for re-election. That you would just have to notify the town clerk. The second one is it strikes out the requirement on the town meeting vacancies that you'd have to have received at least 10 votes. That would be stricken, so you could just be a write-in with any number of votes. 26 is to eliminate the elected position of constable by striking out the provision that calls for it to be an elected office. 27 is town manager screening committee to add languages that clearly explicitly states that it shall include a selectman and town residents. Article 28 goes to that if you've eliminated the elected portion of constable, you now would have the appointment of the constable by the town manager from a list of candidates provided to him by the chief of police, and then obviously subject to the selectman's confirmation. I don't know what it means if 26 passes and
Yeah, I was
28
thinking that.
fails.
Are there any, yeah, I was gonna say,
I
that's,
guess we don't have a constable?
You don't have a
anymore?
constable, right, yeah.
are there any financial implications regarding that? Moving it from an elected to an appointed position, given that a constable also serves other items besides just town warrant postings, where there is a fee charged?
Yeah. Not that I'm aware of the change from elected to appointed.
'Cause I know other towns do appoint it.
Most towns
Yeah.
do appoint.
Yeah.
I think this was a legacy position that Bill
Mhm.
Spence held the job from like 1965 until his passing a couple of years ago. And then once that had happened, we sort of said, hey, we should look at this. And so that's what's.
No, I know Chief Spinney's voiced his concerns.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really a public safety issue,
Mhm.
liability and coordination of safety, because they're serving civil service, and you just pick up the news and see
Oh.
stuff that goes on. You go onto somebody's property or dealing with
A lot of the service for
Your
domestic relations.
relations,
so, yeah.
exactly. Article 29 is the charter revision regarding, make it clear that they can renew 6 months for an acting town manager, because I guess there was some question on whether the current language provided that clarity. And then Article 30 is so long that I didn't even put it on the slide. It's all these ministerial and grammatical non-substantive changes that go on and on and on. And Article 31 is.
We're not voting on it, it's okay, Sam.
Is reordering and categorizing the town administrator's powers and duties. Again, it's not substantive. And that's the warrant, 31 articles. Oops.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, hopefully to complete the presentations on all the articles.
Speaking of which, up next on the agenda is discussion of future meetings and timeline for Finance Committee warrant book production. Now, we have a couple of presentations next week. We've heard about a few of them tonight. Mainly, I know Dr. Lane's coming in next week to talk about just a brief overview of the different projects that have been going on. We have the EDC coming in to talk about hopefully an agreed upon discussion on Article 6. We also have, or expect people to be coming in to discuss the 3 marijuana articles that we were reviewing. And there are a couple other people we may want to reach out to. I might want to reach out to the zoning article regarding the change from OC to residential. Is there anything else, any of the articles anyone can see that they would want? Well, actually, CPC is one of the other ones. They don't have their vote until next Wednesday. And I believe Paul just said that probably Bill Askenberg will be coming in as well regarding that ask as far as is that article is concerned for the Roberts Field. I know that, just in brief discussions, that the full amount that they're asking for is far outreaching that amount that they're asking for this town meeting, but the immediate concern, from what I understand, is the Friendship Park and the replacement of the unsafe equipment at that location. I believe that's where most of the money is being geared towards, to replace those so that they can improve the safety and the quality of the equipment, which has far outlived its lifespan. Yeah. So, other than those, anybody else have any that, in particular, that they've seen that they'd want a little more discussion on, rather than our own discussion, which will reach far into the night?
Yes.
No? Okay, so we have our invitations. There are a couple I want to extend that we don't have currently. I think the goal, Pam, you'll be happy to hear, is to vote next week, given our very, very compressed timeline. With town meeting starting a day earlier than it did last year, and us getting started, I think, two days later than we did last year, or something around that span. If we were to vote not this Thursday, but the following Thursday, we would literally have to have the book completed that night and get it to the printer the next morning and try to turn it around for delivery on that Monday. Is that an accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did the schedule.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now, and it's,
Yeah. And, you know, if we had to do it the other way,
We could,
Could, but,
that's a very tight schedule,
yeah, I don't think they'd have them already.
yeah.
But it would be on the web, and they probably have some books printed, and I'm sure like everybody doesn't come to grab a book on Monday. 'Cause they probably wouldn't have them all printed.
Yeah. Yeah, so September 27th is that Wednesday before that Thursday. So on that the schedule I have here from Pam, it's clerk prints final copy of book. In order to do that, we actually have to have votes in there. Not that we have never printed without votes before, however, I think our goal is to get all the votes done, especially where there's a curriculum night that following Thursday anyway. So the parents in our group here will be attending, and I'll be able to be here. So let's get a full panel and vote on next week and get this knocked out of the park.
So what you're saying is next week
What's
we
next?
have those additional speakers in and we'll vote.
And a vote.
And vote.
So it's gonna be a long night.
It'll be a long night. But it may mean that we're not in the next Thursday.
Yeah.
So we have two
Should we-
finance committee meetings before town meeting.
Should we move it up and, like, should we start at
Earlier,
7?
like at 7?
No. That's a nice thought.
What do you try?
But if you're flying me here, I can do it. We can discuss it. Where it's already on the schedules for CTM too, I think it might be tough.
Oh, okay, that's right.
So, I think we're still going 7:30 next week, and it'll be like it was for the Springtown meeting,
Yeah.
where we were here till 11:15.
Okay.
But we got everything done,
Yeah.
and there are less financial articles this time around. Now, if you keep in mind, we had a couple presentations that night, and we went through a lot more financial articles.
Yeah.
So I think we can do it, as long as we keep the discussion to a minimum. Just saying.
Sounds good.
All right.
Pretty good.
Like I said, I'll bring snacks.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, so, I think that nails down where the schedule is and where we're going. So, if anyone has any further discussion, otherwise, we can head on to next part of the agenda, the reorganization of the committee. I put this on the agenda because this meeting last year is when we did the reorg. So we're at a year anniversary. We've kind of reset the reorg anniversary because of Tom's passing, because we usually did this in January or December after fall town meeting, but I think it's fine talking about it right now if everyone's ready to do so.
Can you explain the rules on the reorganization? We really didn't go over like is it required to happen every year?
Not
Okay. I just
required.
didn't know, because we did it just because of Tom's passing. We didn't really, it wasn't like it was an annual thing.
Well, actually, it was,
Around like
the
that.
vote usually is an annual thing.
Yeah. Okay.
We review it customarily every year. We talk about the reorg. We don't have to reorg, but we put it there for a vote
Okay.
and discussion, because it's traditionally what we've done. So, we've just moved the date up a little bit, that's all.
It's a point of discussion, Jim, are you happy with your role? Would you like to continue? Just to move the point along, like.
Loaded question. It
'Cause,
depends on who you're asking. I wonder if I'm getting a text right now.
Because you are excellent at it.
Well, thank you.
And I know we've taken
Yes.
advantage of your talents and your skills, but, I
Well,
think you run a good meeting and you do an excellent job preparing everything, so.
I would like to second that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So if your wife is okay with it.
I can't speak for my wife. I've learned not to do that.
So let's vote before
she starts to text me, right?
Move to reappoint all the officers in their current positions.
I'll
Second?
second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So your wife can't.
I'm abstaining.
He's not getting himself in trouble.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That means you're on the hook again, too, by the way. All right, so, any old business? Seeing as it's the first meeting since April? No, I don't think there's any old business to discuss. I think we pretty much covered everything we need to cover. Any new business we want to discuss?
I have something that, do we ever get a report on, like the whole putting the wires underground? Do we ever get any update on what the balance is in that account, if that's just something that's never gonna happen, do we ever, is that number ever, whatever happens with that?
I think that's dependent upon, is it Verizon, or is it, I think it's Verizon.
Because they're losing so many traditional landlines
It's never gonna happen.
I mean, is there a balance in that account, or how do you get what they got out of it?
I mean, the last time that, like, we don't have the balance in our books, but I'm talking, like, Verizon has it. The last time I heard is they didn't have any money left. That was the,
Trying to think what was on the board. I know we took some money and we did one more phase, I think, with the money we had. And then we were gonna have to use some type of town funds in the
it was gonna have to be-
multi-million-dollar
yeah, it
range
was
to
gonna have be town funds
finish
to
it.
finish it. Like, there was no more Verizon funds because the landlines were going away, so there was no money to.
Comcast, as we all know, is in the phone business, and that was doing okay, but Verizon was just losing so many subscribers to traditional landlines, it just wasn't feasible. We could discuss that with the town.
It might have been,
I didn't know if there was a balance, or that if we ever heard the balance.
I don't think there is.
And then, so the town, like, so with the community preservation funds, is that something that could be used towards that? I'm just curious.
So,
I don't think that's a.
no,
No, that's
I
not
don't think
a,
that's permitted use, no. I don't think it's happening unless something miraculous occurs. I think we're gonna continue having lines in the center.
maybe if we got that couple $1 million in grant money from the state, they approved a bonding a couple years ago and
That's
they
true.
never released it. If we were gonna tear up the sidewalks and some other things, that would be the time to do it.
That would be the time to do it.
We don't know when that, or if that money will ever be
It
released.
will ever be released.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know,
I didn't, we don't have, it was just, I was just curious about that. One day as I was driving through the center of town and wondered if there was ever a number released versus what we needed, or what the whole update was.
we can use all that marijuana income.
Yeah,
There you go.
you could, yeah. Put like 5 poles a year underground.
Any other new business?
Can I just, next week when Dr. Lane comes, is he gonna be giving us a recap as well of the fiscal budget where they ended the school?
I think he's gonna give a brief overview. I talked to him briefly the other day. He's gonna talk about the completion of the modulars and them going online and how the first couple weeks of school have gone. He said it was a very good transition this year as a start of school. And he'll give us a quick update on that. I will reach out to him again and ask him if he wants to bring the business director as well, so they can just give a quick recap, although we got a lot of that from Darlene tonight.
I mean, if he doesn't, I can give you a reporting on that, where they are fiscally with that account.
I mean, just like even at a high level, we don't need to necessarily, but just kind of
They're
just,
actually, I mean, I hate to say this, but I'm talking to Gary Crucichetti last week. They're gonna come in, I think, under
Under budget, yeah.
On that account, so,
Perfect.
I think everything was very, successful.
That's what I've been hearing, yeah, so.
yeah. And then what about Neshoba, maybe having them come up and give us,
We can certainly
Year-end.
extend the invitation.
I don't wanna make it longer, but like even, like, if we can get their year-end.
I don't, but so they're gonna, like, I don't even know when you have to officially submit your year-end report to the state. It's not right away yet. It's October, isn't it?
They won't have,
We have until October 31st to get your year-end report in.
Right. Right.
which is why we usually don't
That's
have
why they
anything
usually don't
finalized in
spring.
January, yeah.
Right.
So,
So they could have, I mean, Neshoba, they don't like to show it until it's been certified,
mhm.
but the Chelmsford Public Schools may provide you a
I
copy of
just like
that
to see,
before,
like,
yeah.
after the year's done, like, it's kinda, I don't know, I just,
I mean, they should,
it's
they
just,
should have a certified balance sheet at that point. They won't have a year-end
No.
report in.
Right.
But they should, I mean, they would know what their free cash number is, and they would know they would have a balance sheet.
it's just kinda like that, like, I feel like we, like, don't close the loop, I don't know.
We can, we can certainly extend the invitation and see if they're willing to come in.
Even if it's afterwards, or just a
Yeah.
report or something sent to us, so we all
Have something sent
it.
to us just so we know where they are.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we can definitely do that. I nominate you to reach out to them. So, all right, any other new business? Okay, any public comment? No public comment, Mike? No?
Sitting back there awfully
Okay.
quiet.
There you go. We'll put more in next week for you. Any press? No press questions. All right, if that's all, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, see everyone next week.